Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can turn into a storm that changes every life it touches. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, stay till the end. This story will make you believe again. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in miracles. The night had turned cruel. Rain fell like shards of broken glass, slicing through the silence of the forest. The wind howled through the tall pines, and the world seemed to drown in the storm's fury. Inside a small wooden cabin, a fire flickered weakly, struggling to stay alive, much like the woman who sat beside it. Martha Hayes was known in the valley as the kind widow. It had been 8 years since her husband, Daniel, passed away in a tragic accident while rescuing a child from a burning barn. Since that day, Martha had lived alone in their little cabin on the edge of Black Ridge Forest, surviving on her vegetable garden and her memories. She had known loneliness too long, yet never let it harden her heart. She still left a lantern by her window every night, a beacon for travelers lost in the woods. It was a habit Daniel had started, and she had promised never to stop. That night, as the storm grew wilder, the faint cry of something or someone rose above the thunder. At first, she thought it was the wind, but then came the unmistakable sound of a child's voice. Without hesitation, Martha grabbed her lantern, threw on her shawl, and stepped into the downpour. The rain stung her face, soaking her within seconds, but she kept moving toward the sound. Finally, she saw him. A small boy, no older than 7, huddled beneath a fallen tree, trembling from cold and fear. "Sweetheart," she called out, kneeling beside him. "You'll catch your death out here." The boy's eyes, wide and frightened, lifted to hers. My horse ran away," he stammered, his teeth chattering. "I was with my father, and then I couldn't find him." Martha wrapped her arms around him, feeling how cold he was. "You're safe now," she whispered. "Come with me." She carried the boy back through the storm, holding him close against her chest. When they reached the cabin, she stripped off his soaked clothes, wrapped him in a blanket, and set him near the fire. Slowly, warmth returned to his cheeks. "Thank you, ma'am," the boy murmured, his eyelids drooping. "What's your name, dear?" "Eli," he said softly before drifting into sleep. Martha watched him for a long time, her heart aching. She had no children of her own. She and Daniel had tried for years, but fate had been unkind. Yet looking at Eli now, fragile and innocent, something inside her stirred. A forgotten tenderness. She made him warm soup, dried his little boots by the fire, and whispered a prayer of thanks that she had found him before the forest claimed him. The rain stopped some time after midnight. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm. Martha looked out the window, uneasy. The woods were too still. Morning came with a strange brightness, the kind that hides danger behind calm skies. Martha was preparing breakfast when the ground outside began to tremble. Then came the sound of hooves, dozens of them, pounding against the wet earth. Eli woke with a start. His small hands clutched her sleeve. "They found me," he whispered. Martha froze. "Who, darling?" "My father's men," he said, voice quivering. "They're coming." Moments later, the riders appeared. Fierce men in black coats, armed and stern-faced. They surrounded the cabin like a circle of wolves. Their leader dismounted and walked to the door. When Martha opened it, she was met with the cold, sharp gaze of a man who looked like he carried a weight of kingdoms on his shoulders. "Where is my son?" he demanded. Martha stepped aside. "He's safe. He was lost in the storm. I found him." The man's expression flickered, relief quickly masked by authority. Eli ran to him, clutching his father's waist. The man dropped to his knees, holding the boy tightly. For a moment, the hard shell of command cracked, and raw love spilled through. "Thank God," he whispered. Martha's heart softened. But as soon as the boy was safe, the man's demeanor changed again. He rose, his voice cold. "You should not have taken him in. Do you know who I am?" Martha shook her head. "I am Lord Alaric Stanton," he said, "governor of the northern provinces. My enemies would kill to harm my son. You should have informed my guards the moment you found him." "I couldn't," Martha replied calmly. "It was storming. There was no way to send word. I did what any decent person would do." "Decency can be dangerous," he said grimly. His words stung. She met his gaze, unflinching. And so can pride, my lord. For a long moment neither spoke. The wind rustled through the pines. Then, surprisingly, the boy broke the silence. "Papa, she saved me," Eli said. "She kept me warm. Don't be mean to her." The governor looked down at his son, then back at the woman before him. His expression softened, ever so slightly. "You have my gratitude, madam," he said stiffly, "and my apology. The world I live in is not kind." Martha nodded. "That's why kindness matters even more." Before leaving, Lord Alaric offered her gold for her trouble. She refused. "I didn't do it for money," she said. "Just promise you'll teach him to be kind, too." He hesitated, then bowed slightly, something rare for a man of his rank. "You have my word." And with that, he mounted his horse and rode away with his men, the sound of hooves fading into the forest. Martha stood at her door long after they were gone. The morning sun broke through the clouds, glinting off the wet earth, and she smiled faintly. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, as Martha was tending her garden, a carriage arrived. Out stepped Lord Alaric himself, dressed simply this time without guards. Beside him was Eli, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Martha Hayes," the governor said, "I came to thank you properly." Eli ran to her and hugged her tightly. "I missed you," he said, tears welled in her eyes. "And I missed you too, little one." Lord Alaric looked around her modest cabin, the weathered wood, the smoke curling gently from the chimney, the flowers by the window. "You live simply," he said softly, "but there's peace here. Something I haven't known in years." Martha smiled. "Peace comes from giving more than taking." He nodded thoughtfully. "I've spent my life building power, defending borders, chasing titles. But that night when I thought I'd lost him," his voice cracked, "I realized none of it meant anything without love." Eli tugged at his sleeve. "Papa said I could come visit you sometimes. He says you remind him of Mama." Martha's heart ached again, in that beautiful, painful way only kindness can stir. "You're always welcome, both of you." Over the following months, Lord Alaric returned often, sometimes with Eli, sometimes alone. Slowly, the walls around his heart began to crumble. He would sit by Martha's fire, listening to her speak about simple things, growing herbs, mending clothes, forgiving the past. He found peace there. And though no words of love were spoken, something quiet and healing grew between them, two souls mended by shared loss and rediscovered kindness. Years later, people in the valley spoke of a governor who changed the fate of their province, one who ruled with mercy instead of fear. They said his wisdom came from a widow in the woods, a woman whose kindness saved not just a boy in the rain, but an entire heart hardened by power. Sometimes, one act of kindness can change more than you'll ever know. If you believe the world still needs more hearts like Martha's, like, share, and subscribe, because kindness is the only legacy that never fades.